Hello and welcome to Building Brand Gravity. This is Anne Green. I'm a principal and managing director at G&S Business Communications. And for this episode, I am delighted to be interviewing a friend and colleague, Luke Lambert, who is the president and CEO of G&S currently, and will soon be retiring. So, Luke, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Anne. It's great to be talking to the soon-to-be CEO at G&S.
That's right. We're going to do a little trading places here. We knew this year was going to go fast and it's coming upon us. So it just seemed like a wonderful opportunity to get a chance to reflect on your years in the industry, not just at GNS, but as a leader within marketing communications as a whole. So I guess the one thing I'd start with is where I start with a lot of interviewees, which is tell us about the years that you've been president and CEO at GNS. How long has it been now that you've been in the CEO role in particular?
I've been in the CEO role 11 years now, Anne, and at GNS for 27.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. So, as you come to this end of the chapter of your agency leadership, it's always interesting to know how people became a leader in the first place. So, how did you start to move into organizational leadership within an agency, in addition to the client work that you were doing for so many years?
Yeah, great question. I think it all started, I was just really in a fortunate position to realize and experience leadership responsibilities early in my career. Really, on the agency side, I was in those first couple years, and that was really for a couple reasons. One is it all starts with client service. I had some pretty strong client relationships and a lot of strong support from my clients, and then opportunities just present themselves, and you find yourself able to jump in to fill an account leadership position or a gap when those opportunities open up. So it's a great question because I don't think it's not a one size fits all answer. Those early moments for me, when I reflect on it, are really kind of define my desire to look for and aspire to leadership roles throughout my career, outside of the agency world too. And I think I could ask you the same question. I don't think you or I had a roadmap on how to become a president or a CEO of an organization. I just think it happens naturally over time, over a long time, with really strong, internal support and external support. It could be your peers, colleagues, your clients, people who encourage you, show trust in you and count on you. And I think that's when leadership's for you, and that's where a lot of confidence is gained, I think.
Yeah, it is interesting how I think when I was younger, I looked at those in leadership positions and figured that they had planned to be there, that was and certainly that's the case for many people. I joke that I'm more of an accidental CEO because it's just something I allowed to evolve over time. But you're right. You have opportunities and you keep taking them and you get excited about it,
Yes,
and you get
exactly.
excited about, as hard as it can be, you get excited about what it means to work with people in that way. Um, I think what's funny is when you start to do something, right, you don't have the benefit of hindsight, which you have later. I
Right.
used to joke with folks that sometimes it's like looking through a piece of Swiss cheese. You can see a hole and a hole, but you cannot see the big picture. So if you think about that stage of your life when you were starting to take on more organizational leadership, wherever in your trajectory you want to reflect on, what do you know now that you wish you had understood better earlier?
Yeah. Boy, maybe not a typical response, and I would think, but I think probably the biggest learning for me over time that I wish I knew earlier on when I first became a leader is just how close my connection needed to be with the financial discipline within the organization. Let's face it, we started out as communicators, right? I was a PR journalism major. So it's not something you think about necessarily when you first become a leader, but that link is so critical to your success early on as a leader. But of course, it naturally increases quite a bit in importance over time. And I know you feel the same way, and I have just been so fortunate to have been aligned with wonderful CFOs and CEOs who provide me with data and trends and counsel. And I think more important than all of that, honestly, is just perspective to critical decision making. So um, I know you probably feel the same way, and I think we're working harder than ever to help young leaders understand the business. We call it the business of G&S.
Yeah, there's so many things you bring to mind. I know over the years I've worked with many growing leaders and those who came out more of a humanities or communications or marketing track. There's sometimes a self narrative that comes out that can be quite defeating, which is, well, we don't do math, we don't know the finances. And it's kind of like, well, you're leading a very large account, therefore you do math and you will do math. And it was almost more of a, let's step back and understand the story we're telling about ourselves to ourselves, and that we have to own our expertise more. We don't have to come up having a CPA, like our colleague, our CFO, Seth, or others, but we have to own that. And I remember my father very early in my career encouraging me to take a class with the American Management Association called Finance for Non-Financial Professionals. Now, interestingly, that was so early in my career, it was a little too early. So
Right,
it was hard for me to absorb all of those
right,
concepts at that time. But it did give me a foundation. And also, it made me recognize I have a responsibility, like you
yeah,
said, to really
yeah,
engage in that and to own it and to say,
yes,
we don't have to be, as a
yeah.
CEO, as a president, you don't have to be everything to all people,
Yeah.
right?
Leadership's a team sport, and you learn that
Yeah,
early.
it's sure.
Yeah, yeah,
It sure is. I mean, talking about a team sport, this is a really complex industry. There's so many pieces that are both unique and challenging, but also important in terms of that agency leadership. For younger, aspiring agency leaders, trying to learn how to run this kind of business or even understand how it operates so they feel more a part of it day to day versus things happening to them, they're more of an agent in it. What are some of those aspects of agency business or running an agency that you think are really important for them to reflect on?
yeah. I think most of our aspiring and young leaders are feeling this today. But I know one thing we've all learned is that change in this industry came pretty fast over the past 10
Yeah.
years. I'm not making it sound like it was just in the past year. No, this has been happening for a while. But in the whole tenure of this industry, that's pretty quick pace when you look at the full
Mhm.
integration, in our industry beyond PR to include everything that we're living today: data, analytics, digital marketing, creative media. And then, Ann, way better than me because I've seen you tackle this topic, AI. What are the opportunities, short-term opportunities? What are the long-term implications of AI? And all those things, managing that change at the speed at which we're doing it is complicated. So I think to your question, what's my takeaway for aspiring leaders? I think we have a lot of leaders that are forward looking, and that's wonderful. But I think forward looking leaders also really need to understand it. And I can say this based on my own experience, my own risks and mistakes made is to, yes, plan and build for the future. It's critical, but never lose sight of what your clients want from you today. So if you swing too far in one direction in this business, it can be really easy to lose focus on what's our number one priority in the agency. Well, it's clients. So you can lose focus on servicing their needs. It's important to do both, service the needs and innovate at the same time. Really.
Yeah, it's such an interesting dynamic tension. We've been talking about it here, even from a business perspective. You need to keep investing in innovation, but you also need to be minding the bottom line. And I think that there's an analog to what you said there, which is you need to push forward and keep bringing fresh ideas and fresh thinking and say, this is where the ball could go or the puck in the old, adage. But also be really mindful of the bottom line for clients today. And I think that inside the agency and outside the agency, we have to be thinking that way. I mean, speaking of change, right? You're right. You're completely right. I joke, with some longtime colleagues and leaders throughout the industry that's like, is this the craziest time to run an agency? Or was it,
Yeah.
5 years ago? Is it tomorrow?
Right.
I mean, the world as a whole, the geopolitical issues, change in technology, people management, post pandemic. It's just like the list goes on and on and on. So let's roll the clock back to when we started our career. I started, in full disclosure, in 92 as an intern, 93. So I'm 30 years. I'd
Yeah.
love to hear first, before we talk about notable changes, like situate us in like when you started working in comms. You came out of college. What year was it? Where were you working?
Yeah, it was 1986, and
Yeah.
I joined a firm a little smaller than they are now, G&S, and that was a lot of people don't know that I it was with G&S for just a couple of years and was gained some wonderful agency experience and then left and I was gone for about 9 years and I went to the corporate side. I worked in the technology industry and stayed in public relations, but also morphed into an advertising role as well. And then went to the consulting business as well, the consulting side at a multi-regional accounting and consulting firm. And so I've seen change happen in multiple industries, whether it be consolidation or technology, and it's been the breadth of experience I'm very thankful for.
That's amazing. And I think I've been agency the whole time. I remember Kim Sample of the PR Council once calling herself an agency animal. So I guess that strikes me too. So I think it's wonderful that you had a view on both sides of the aisle, so to speak. So when you think about this arc of change, and there's so many to speak of, what are some of the changes in our field specifically, let's say integrated marketing communications and all of its spokes off the hub of the wheel, that have been most striking to you as you look back?
Yeah, you hit on some of it, Ann, and it's the whole enchilada, I think. And because I'm going to repeat a little bit what you just said, it's that pace of change.
Mm.
When you look at the impact of technology, data, and innovation in our industry, um, that's been incredible to watch. But in recent years, as you mentioned, there's, whether it be larger environmental, social, geopolitical uh, trends around the world. Uh, to me, I don't know, maybe I'm just more in a reflective mood these days, but the world seems smaller than ever, and this year in particular. So I know I can safely say, because we talk about this in our industry, that our clients, CEOs and CCOs, have more on their plates than ever. You put that against the backdrop of distrust in government, distrust in media, misinformation in general. I feel like the stakes are higher. The pressure on our clients is greater than ever to find their voice, to find balance internally and externally, so that they can regain trust with obviously their customers, but also their employees. So this is not a new dynamic. It's, you and I have talked about this. The industry is probably the most significant dynamic we've been talking about as industry leaders for some time now. Yeah. But it just gets more and more complicated. Think about just the past year. Now businesses, have to face criticism. They're on the receiving end of it from our own political parties, both on the right and the left. Just in case we needed more pressure as business leaders. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, it is. And it does feel there's always been volatility, uncertainty. I joke that sometimes professional service is a little bit like whack-a-mole, because it's very few times that the moles are all under they're popping up. You don't have stasis very often. But for our clients and well as ourselves, there do seem to be a broader portfolio of things that can pop up out of the blue and really change the game in many ways, and force you to truly reevaluate and make some hard pivots, or make our clients make some hard pivots. So I would agree with you. It's hard, again, without distance, to look back and say, yes, that is different, but it does feel more intense, and it does feel like every day, who knows what may come, be ready. And that resilience is critical.
It is.
On the other side of the coin, over the arc of both of our careers, I know there's things that feel very similar, that there's a consistent thread from the beginning to now. What are some of those threads for you, that as much as our industry and the business world and the world have changed, things that feel very consistent to you in what we do?
Yeah, something else I've been reflecting on a lot. I was in Chicago last week and asked this question, and it's really an easier question, I think, in that that's client service. The client service business itself, the formula for success, I think, is remarkably similar from when I started in 1986. It's so simple that I don't even think we talk about it very often, and that's just to build trust with your employees and build trust with your clients, and then and deliver results and deliver value, add value as a strategic partner. That always has been, and I think always will be the key to lasting success. So now, getting there today because of everything we've talked about is more complicated. But that's not really a complaint because when you step back and look at this honestly, we should be pretty happy that today compared to 1986, look at the huge arsenal of integrated and digital marketing tools at our disposal so that we can deliver, way more targeted, efficient, effective campaigns than ever before. I think you'd agree.
Oh, 100%. And
And
that question of what is client service excellence? How do we
yeah,
manifest it today? And that excellence, it's really the experience we're creating for everyone, not just our clients, but our people, for anyone who visits us, how we bring our very best work, how we push ourselves. Part of that is how we cultivate longtime team members and all their knowledge, but also welcoming new folks and their energy. And it's that beautiful cycle, that four
it is.
generations in our
Then
agency workforce right now, which is pretty amazing.
right,
And that's actually a good pivot, the idea of trust and how that's the foundation of everything, to that question of our most precious asset, which is our own people and the culture that we build around them. I think that is, we would all agree, the heart of any entity like ours, of
right,
our world, is the culture and the people who come together. So culture is one of those big terms often said but often not well defined. People talk about it as if they know what they're talking about. And, sometimes I say, what is a good culture? Everything all at once, like the movie. But to you, if you think about the component parts of culture at an agency like G&S that really cares about our people, not to say others don't, but who we really care and want each day to ask ourselves, how can we be the best we can be for our clients and our people? What are some of the component parts of culture for you?
Hmm, great question. I I think first I'd say our mid-size as an agency has always been an advantage, frankly, in building caring and collaborative culture. It's meant so much to me. I know how much it means to you. You live and breathe it every day. But the key components, good point. I think it starts with um, important values like building trust for us, embracing inclusion, winning together, having fun while you're doing all that. Uh, that that is what creates a culture, and I think that has helped define our culture. And it over the past 6 months since I've announced my departure, I've been really fortunate to hear from uh, former colleagues, existing colleagues about our caring culture and how much it's had an impact on current employees, but more importantly, former colleagues who have gone on to other careers and leadership positions, and they remark how much that's had our culture has had a lasting impact on them. So I think it's really important to pay attention to culture shifts, it changes. It's not something you can just say our culture is caring. It's something that you need to have checks and balances on really an annual basis. And you've opened my eyes to that. And you and our chief people officer, Kate, through what's more than others in terms of just how important it is. You can build a culture over time, but you can hurt it in a short period of time if you don't pay attention to it.
Yeah, it's such a good point. This question of trust again, maybe there's financial analogy of putting money in the bank and you incrementally save and you build up that equity and capital. I mean, we often talk about brand equity. This is a common metaphor in this area. trust is a currency. I think these are very apt metaphors, but you can cash it out real fast, you know, and it's an interesting thing too, because I think this is beyond our industry, just to this issue of management and employees, or management versus employees, which is often, it seems like it's pitted against each other. But, you know, I think those of us in organizational leadership, it just has to be table stakes that that many employees look at management as trust but verify. You know, you need to build up that equity, but you have to know too that there's going to be a skepticism even in the best culture. And I think that, you know, one of my themes this year is hold less tightly, like be less invested in certain things. And I feel like we don't have to hold tightly to this thing of, well, why don't you trust me? Don't you know what we're doing? It's
Yeah.
like more like, well, trust but verify, and let us keep proving it to you every day. And it's not
Yeah.
easy, but I think it's important, you know.
Yeah. You've helped me on that,
Well,
with
and
that
vice
outlook.
versa.
And yeah.
Vice versa. Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
this is something really remarkable, but when someone reaches a milestone where they're going to retire or change, turn a page, that's where you really start to feel the energy that they've built up around them over the years. And, you know, I won't embarrass you too much. I'll go on to other questions, but the kind of energy and warmth around your leadership, there's that old saying of people forget what you say and what you do, but they don't forget how you made them feel. And that's, I think that's a very apt quote with you, Luke, because one of the things that can be so hard with leaders is feeling like you're distant from them or you can't connect with them. And you really, I think, made the culture here the fact that all of our leaders are here to be connected with. You know, is that important to you personally, to be open and approachable and to have people to be able to interact with you just as a person?
Oh, it is 100%. It's just, but it's part of who I am. It's just connecting with people on an individual level, and uh, showing them you care, showing them you're in the trenches with them, because we all have been through many moments over the course of our career where you are in the trenches, and it's all hands on deck. And I think that attitude um, should be applied throughout your entire career. Um, and I think the biggest compliment I've always gotten is, you know, you'd never ask anybody to do something that you wouldn't do yourself or with them.
I could not agree more. And isn't that the heart of client service too? You know,
It is.
it's really a mirror. It reflects back and forth. So I talked about the generations. I find it very funny in society, in the business world. There's always this sort of like generation this, generation that. You're like this, you're like that. You know, I experienced that coming into Burson Marsteller in the early 90s, where everyone was trying to dissect Generation X and they're slackers and they don't seem to be interested. I'm like, I don't know. All my friends and I are working 1,000 hours trying to survive in New York. But we've got boomers, we've got Gen Xers, we've got millennials, we've got Gen Zers. Soon we'll have another cohort coming up. There's all this talk about the difference between, and
Right.
some of it is age and life stage. But what do you see as consistent, or the through lines of our teams across generations? What feels consistent to you in terms of how everyone is showing up for the work we do?
Yeah, boy, I love your observation on the generations. And
Yeah.
I think we subscribe um, to the same line of thinking here, because I've never been a fan of generational labels. I think they've been a lot of fun over the course of my career to talk about. You to see them in segmentation presentations from that standpoint. But the whole premise behind it is to make an assumption about a really, really large group of people. and and yet, as you just asked me a minute ago, the premise that I've subscribed to as a leader and as a person is to not do, rather find out what makes individuals tick, you know, what experiences have shaped their lives, and more than anything, gain their respect by building relationships, especially without barrier to, you know, your role or title. And I think when you approach leadership that way with employees, they're all in with you, and it it's amazing how hard people work that join GNS. I mean, it they are all in. And this year in particular, this has been a year of, you know, all kinds of twists and turns and ups and downs. And our people have been all in from day one, helping us uh, uh, address challenges, tackle their client work with pride, looking to win together. It's just amazing to me to watch,
Yeah,
and
I
I'll
couldn't
miss
agree more.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and we'll miss you being a part of it. This actually, you talking about all the individuals that make up this company and all they're bringing of themselves. And I think that it's really important we talk about something that's been a true passion of yours and not just optics, not just surface, but really deep, much deeper. We've had a chance to talk about this a lot, which is what it means to really engage in these words diversity and inclusion and equity and belonging in a corporate setting as part of a larger society that has structures and systems in place that have not been very examined over the years that really make it a very difficult and very negative experience for many of the people in our society and how we come to terms with that. And obviously, there's a lot of issues and attitudes and politics around this. But, what I'd love to understand as you've put a lot of personal time and also capital, like personal capital, business capital, and financial capital of the company into these efforts. Um, what do DE&I efforts mean to you in an agency context like ours?
Well, it's a really good question. Um, I've always started, and this, and from day one, I can remember, when our initiatives started in 2015. I've always started with the business premise, that, and this is what it means to me. I mean, we are running a business, and I never lose sight of that. I'm an agency, or I'm a leader of an organization. Doesn't matter what kind of organization. So if you're going to embark on something, like a DE&I initiative, you have to clearly state to your organization that we're doing this because we want to create a better, more understanding, more inclusive culture at the organization. Why? Get right to the why. And because diversity of thought, diversity of experiences of our workforce, what does it do? It makes us more creative. It makes us more competitive. And if we are, we're probably going to win more as a result. And I think for me, and this is where I take so much out of it personally too, it will help us better understand the world around us, which we could all use a helping hand there right now. And so it's, when you sum it up from a business premise, it's pretty powerful, and it's hard to not sign up for that.
I think that's so important to reroot it in the why and what it does. I talk about the business as a tapestry, and it's not like there's a thread over here that's DE&I. It's really how it weaves into everything, makes us better business people, makes us better managers, makes us more trusting, lets us fly, takes friction out of the
Right.
system,
Right.
improves our communities, gives new opportunity, fires us up, gets us out of our silos of our own experience. But I think you're right, especially in these days where there's pressure, like you said, outside pressure on
Yes.
organizations that's more politically driven, or maybe I think it's even more mercenary of people, trying to position themselves. It can be hard for folks that way to stay connected to it. And I think that why really helps. But in terms of your insight, so as we've worked to sort of move this along and manifest it and keep making progress, what are some of the insights you've taken away from that work, both the hard things and the things that we've celebrated?
Yeah, I think, well, the first insight was, uh, hit the business premise right away, and
Hmm.
we just talked about that, so I won't repeat that. But
Yep.
I think the thing we learned early on, I've been really blessed to have some amazing people to lean on in our industry. Uh, Cheryl Battles, Rochelle Ford, more recently Carmela Glover, Yuan, and Kate, our chief people officer. Um, and I remember Rochelle telling me, uh, that you need to start by truly before you embark on an initiative, with around diversity, equity, inclusion. Start by understanding your current culture, because if you don't do that homework, it's gonna be impossible to create a welcoming and productive place where open dialogue about DE&I resonates from within the organization, and that's just so critical. Um, and then I'd say the other thing is you have your ups and downs, and so when progress is not going the way you want, um, I think it's important to, much like we do client satisfaction and performance evaluations, do an annual employee engagement survey so that you can each year understand how you're doing in this area, both from a culture standpoint, but from a DE&I perspective as well. So those are just two insights that come to mind first and foremost.
No, I love those. I would add to it, representation really does matter. So the numbers really do matter, and you can't lose sight of those, but you have to go hand in hand with the inclusion piece of what does it mean to create a space that people want to stay and feel seen, and how do
Right,
you build trust? And again, I strongly feel that means we just become better managers and better at people integration overall,
right.
no matter what your intersections of identity are. But that's why I'm
Yes.
excited. We'll be embarking on a real push around inclusive leadership driven by Marjani Williams, as you know, our VP of DE&I, and Kate Threewitz, our partner and head of HR, and our task force has been involved in it. And I think it's going to build on so much of what you've envisioned for this, Luke, and in trying to help us have those breakthroughs where we'd have staff say, oh, well, I did these great trainings on implicit bias, but how do I actually bring this into my life? Well, inclusive leadership, I think that this program is going to help. So we will keep you informed as
Yep. And
as the
I
years
can't
go
wait.
on.
I can't wait, Ann. And kudos to you. And I think about when we started this effort in 2015, and we made some headway, and I was so proud of that. And then was really learned early on that that's low hanging fruit. But today,
Yeah.
as I leave the organization, we're in such a fortunate position, with a 7-pillar agency task force. We're so much more engaged across the organization, and that is what matters. That's what really counts.
Yeah.
And I think it's the best practices that you're putting into place, new innovation that you're putting into place. Um, I think because of that engagement, stalling that happens, and we hear a lot about, or I despise the word fatigue,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
can't happen. And the beauty of the program that we've developed and that you drive is that if you fall short on a metric, there's other metrics you can celebrate. And
Hmm.
in other words, you're always moving the ball forward, and you
Yeah.
have to be moving forward. We always say you have to have your foot on the gas, but it's really, you have to have multiple initiatives moving forward to measure success.
No, I so agree. And you can't be disheartened, but you have to hold yourself accountable and say,
Right.
okay, so what do we do here?
Right.
Um, so I hate to acknowledge it, but you're departing GNS soon. Um, I just really have so enjoyed our 5 years of working as colleagues, and the many years I knew you before that and would run up to you at the PR Council meetings and say hi. So, what are some pieces of advice or counsel you want to leave the firm with, and the industry as a whole, as you move on to whatever the next exciting thing you're going to be doing?
Thanks, Ann. You've been too kind this year, but I and you know this. I think the you and I talked a lot about this over the last 6 months. But to my GNS colleagues, I think that there's a reminder that this leadership transition, me leaving, presents a really natural and wonderful opportunity at the agency to fuel new energy, to fuel new thinking, provide more leadership opportunities throughout the organization. And I think the whole team needs to capitalize on it, so that it can benefit all employees. It can create and stir growth. And I think that's what this is all about. And I think this is something, I know you're going to agree with this. It's sometimes lost in industry. I don't want to say just our industry, but industry in general, where executive turnover often feels really abrupt, and
Mm,
where perhaps communications is less focused on immediate opportunities that the change provides. And I think we've got a great opportunity to focus on those things and what new things will stir. And then for the industry, what an amazing industry. How do you impart words of wisdom to some of the most sophisticated and collaborative minds, really in any industry? And I know I'm going to continue to lean on my friends at Page, for instance,
Mhm.
because they provided such a deep reservoir for me of
Yeah.
knowledge, ideas, friendships. Um, but I guess if I had to uh, humbly give some advice, I'd say from a 10,000 foot view, I'd say remind all my colleagues to continue to rise above the divide and the conflict
Mhm.
that defines really so much narrative out there today, and remember that each of us are in really unique positions in industry, to uh, listen to our clients, to help hear the disparate voices that are out there, and help opinions come together to find common ground. And I think that's pretty lofty, right? But I don't think we should underestimate the power of that. Uh, and and just yesterday, I saw something, a colleague and I've known for many years, Bob Feldman, and because it seems like such a tall order what I just said, right? But I think about the effort that he's undertaking right now, which he's called the Dialogue Project, which is pretty simple purpose is to explore what role business can play to reduce polarization in our country today. And Bob says this, and I know we all agree that today this is a pretty acute issue, and that where every issue that arises in the news becomes a third rail issue, and that doesn't always have to be the case, but that's where we are today. And I I didn't know this. I'm probably a little behind the ball on this one, but he's taken the dialogue project to the Fuqua School of Business at Duke, and where business students, future business leaders are going to have the opportunity to discuss diverse viewpoints, business issues. And so that they learn to be able to have dialogue where divide doesn't have to turn into third rail issues. And I think that just underscores what I'm talking about how much promise there is in our industry and what our leaders can do.
That's amazing, and I couldn't agree more. I'd posted on LinkedIn yesterday about another agency leader who had just wanted to send me a book, like an inspirational thing that she felt I would enjoy, and I was just reflecting on the generosity of leaders in our sector, and not just agency folks, but also the corporate side too. But you certainly exemplify that generosity of leadership, Luke, especially this whole year where you and I have kind of been doing the seesaw, as you get ready to retire. So I just want to thank you and thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. I hope folks inside our agency and outside our agency find it interesting. And I will certainly be staying in touch with you over time.
I look forward to it. Thanks, Ann, and I'm glad we got to do this.
All right. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.